like votes so far. So I don't know. Gotta try something new. There was an Ethiopian soup that was really great too. Hey, Lindsay, if you want to start the live stream, we'll go ahead and get started right at 9.
Give me just one more moment, please.
Okay. So having some folks join, welcome everybody to the recommendations panel. For those who are on live stream, we are still admitting our panel members and getting ready. Okay, good morning. Right, good morning. My name is Melissa Schoenberger. I am the Early Childhood Recommendations Panel Chair, and welcome to this Friday monthly meeting and engagement. So just a reminder, this is a remote meeting. This for those who cannot join or have would like to view this later, all of the panel meetings are posted on the Children's Cabinet website. And just reminding everybody that due to this remote meeting and following the Kansas Open Meetings Act, that I ask that everybody raise their hand and clearly identify yourselves before speaking. If we can move to the next. Okay, this is just a gentle reminder for anybody who's new on our live stream and joining that the recommendations panel is an advisory group to the Kansas Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund. That it really serves and is a mechanism to help inform and implement the All In for Kansas Kids Early Childhood Strategic Plan. We have stakeholders that are interested in all things early childhood represented today. So this is a brief overview of the agenda that Lindsay graciously sent out to you earlier this week. Again, we're knee deep in the welcome. Then we're going to have two very specific panel asks, approving of the October agenda, approving of the September meeting minutes. Then we're going to show the opportunity for the open forum, Kansas in the news. Then we're going to meet some additional panel introductions, which have been so far part of my favorite part of the panel, as I really get to know who is represented and why you do the work that you do. And then we're going to get into some reports, system updates, key takeaways, and adjourn for the day. So as we segue into the specific panel work, we have, if you want to move to the next slide, we have the approval of the October agenda. If I can have a panel member make a motion to approve the agenda and somebody second it, I would truly appreciate that.
This is Becca Meitler. I move to approve the September minutes or the October agenda.
Thank you, Becca. If I could have somebody second that, please.
I'll second.
And who was that?
Trina Morgan.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if we can have either a visual raise of the hand of that or a virtual, I would appreciate that. For approval, and for not approving, same sign. Okay, it looks like the adoption of the October 10 agenda passes. And if I could have somebody approve the September minutes and come off mute for that, please.
This is Natalie McLean. I'll make a motion to approve the September minutes.
Thank you. If I could have somebody second that motion, please.
Janelle Dean seconds.
Thank you. Can I have a sign that we all are in agreement to approve those? All right. Same sign of those who disagree. All right, the motion passes, and we can move on with the rest of our fun stuff in our meeting now that that has taken place. So reminder for anybody listening or anybody on our panel that if anybody from outside of the panel membership would like to join us for the Kansas Open Forum, please submit through our website by 5 p.m. the day, so Thursday at 5. If anybody has a topic, has something they would like to share with the panel, something they would like the panel to engage in, welcome to do that. As we did not have anybody for the Kansas Open Forum, we are going to share in what I like to call is a segment of Kansas in the news. And I say news very broadly because news can take many forms, especially in today's media. And I participated in a meeting about 2 weeks ago with Amanda Peterson from the Kansas Department of Education. And she gave a shout out to, hey, have you guys heard the Insight podcast yet? Led by Commissioner Watson. And the focus of the September podcast was raising readers. And I spent a Sunday afternoon, with my ear, really focused in on listening and learning with this podcast. And I got really excited and immediately emailed Amanda and said, hey, can't wait to share this. But really wanted to take a few minutes for us to just listen to the podcast. And it's on, what's really fantastic is you have the ability to join the podcast, through your phones, whatever, but they also have a YouTube site. And wanted to share this and really wanted to share where the conversation focused in on early childhood. So I am going to pause and quit talking and let us all listen to Commissioner Watson and his guests. And really, you might want to shut your eyes and really focus because when you're done, you're going to get like this really like Mr. Rogers feel, like you just could continue listening to Commissioner Watson. And, here you see him in his very formal suit and tie. But in my mind, he was in his, leisure sweater. And it took me back to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and really wanted to listen to more. So big shout out to Commissioner Watson. So Lindsay, if you want to play.
Literature and just loving that opportunity to read to students. And then there's a time when we do instruction that occurs in school.
Okay, so now, reading and early literacy really important. Jennifer, you mentioned that it's just not enough though to have this exposure to print. Talk to me and our listeners about then what is it? Where's the magic sauce in the science? What have we learned from the science of reading that says, okay, I'm just not going to say target, or good night moon over and over. What is it that has to happen early on, just from birth to age 5 for reading, have the most success in the opportunity to read?
I would just really like to highlight the importance of oral language development that starts at birth, if not before. So the opportunity that children have the first time they hear an utterance from anyone who's caring for them and they respond and people react to what that cooing is, all of that starts to generate an understanding for a child that I can communicate. I am able to communicate my needs and my wants. And then as more and more language is developed, they can do that better and better and be more specific in what they need. But the value of oral language can't be, I think it's underestimated. I think we really need to make sure that as families, we understand how vital that is for us to talk with our children, to expose them to the world, to be able to talk about what they see and just really build a strong foundation for oral language, before they enter school, because that is the foundation of what they will read.
Right. Jennifer, we have a great program. It's one of the most things I love about our agency. That is, you can bring your child to work for the first 6 months. And so right now, even on our floor, we have 3 infants. And what I notice is we have a lot of grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, and there's a ton of oral language. A ton, because the minute mom gets tired or has to do some work, someone else has the baby and it now is engaging again. And that oral language development is so prevalent. I just watched that in our agency. Can you talk to that a little bit too, about what you maybe see if you're a kindergarten teacher in the early grades and that hasn't happened, or even as a parent, your perspective on that oral language development?
Oh, I would agree. It is completely important. I can remember when I first moved to Kansas and there was an infomercial about oral language. And it was a mom and a little boy at the grocery store. And it's usually what you see a lot of times is they're holding a phone or holding an iPad. But this mom was showing, oh, look, this is a tomato. Can you say tomato? And using all the proper nouns and of the vegetables and different things. How does it feel? And I was just like, that is where it all begins. And when they get into kindergarten, that's when we actually have that as one of our standards, is the oral language, the speaking and listening, and carrying on a conversation with someone and being able to go to the kitchen and play kitchen with their friend and make orders and do all of that. That is so important for our students, because one thing I always tell the teachers I work with, if they can't say it, they're not going to be able to write it. And so that correlation, even with oral language to writing.
Excellent. And so, okay, so we've talked about 50 years of research. We want oral language development. And I hear from kindergarten teachers and pre-K teachers all the time, kids are coming to school with less oral language development than what I used to see, these veteran teachers. Tell me why that is. I mean, parents are busy, grandparents or caregivers are busy, but what's happening? What's going on?
Part of this will be research, part of this will be opinion.
Okay.
I really believe that as we've gotten busier, young families have gotten busier, have a lot more options. A lot of the time that we used to spend around a dinner table and times just at home engaging in conversation has dropped. And I think a lot of the compensation is putting students and children, young children, in front of educational television that appears to be great, but it is one-sided. There is just a receptive vocabulary, receptive information coming in, and the child isn't able to take turns in conversation and build oral.
So the people listening, Lori, I mean, setting a child, let's use old technology in front of Sesame Street.
Right.
Appears to be really good. Sesame Street's well researched. It's very developmental, and you look at the lesson and you go, "Wow, that's pretty good." But what is it not doing for the child?
So what needs to happen alongside Sesame Street is for an adult to watch with that child in an engaging conversation about what do you see and what did you learn, and having an opportunity, because it's all information coming in and not giving the child an opportunity
So if dad's cooking and not paying any attention, we're not getting the interaction. Is that right?
Yeah. You know, one of the things I've noticed with my own grandchildren is often when they're taking someone to soccer or they're going someplace, a lot of our conversation becomes very abrupt, like take this, open this, don't spill that, very command oriented, and that's just normal, trying to survive going through a drive-through, having a meal, right? On the way to a practice. And some of what is missing is longer sentence structure, ways that we used to converse when we're playing a board game or around a table. So I think really just trying to be intentional about when we do have a conversation with a child that it's rich. It's not just that stilted, command-driven, trying to survive, going through the drive-through opportunity that we often have with our kids.
Jennifer, you talked about maybe in a grocery store, this is a tomato, this is, the feeling of a tomato, this is the color of a tomato, and having that interaction. So that sounds so simple. Why aren't we doing that more? What's getting in the way?
I think it's back to what kind of Lori said. We're just busy. People are like, I've got to get in the grocery store and get out. So you just sit there, be good. Let me get out real quick, and that way we can get home, make dinner, because then maybe for a lot of parents, I have to go to my second job. And I think if we just slow down just for a moment and just have that one conversation, even in the car, did you see what I picked up? What was your favorite thing I bought? Anything like that. That's a great way to have that communication. If you're in that hurry, you've got the drive from your house or your walk from your house to the grocery store and back.
Yeah, that's great. It just kind of slow down just to be in the moment a little bit, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if either one of you, I think it was a Snickers commercial that used to run a few years ago, Betty White, and there was a football and then she got tackled. That is a little bit of exaggeration how my wife behaves in Walmart when she sees a toddler with a tablet. Okay, you can imagine this, right? Because she's like, no. Or we get in the car and then immediately a tablet happens. Just talk about the street signs or the trees or the conversation, right? And so it sounds so simple, but it has to be living in that moment and interaction with young people. Because if they don't get that oral language, then they can't write, they can't transition. Is that correct?
That is so correct. I even make my youngest is a freshman, and we pick up one of his friends every morning to go to school, and they're both wanting to text each other. I'm like, put that down. How's your day today? What happened at football? My son plays soccer. And I just make them talk to each other, and they're laughing instead of, we're in the car. Why are you texting each other?
Okay. I would love to hear your reaction to, just the very 5 to 8 minutes that we listened to, why you all may have thought, what were your thoughts and feelings, and why did you, I know why I wanted to share this and why it was important to me, but why should it be important to this panel to discuss topics about early literacy and what can we do to make informed decisions based around this, roundtable conversation that we witnessed this morning. Love for anybody to jump in.
Desiree Strait. I think as an early childhood educator, we have an opportunity to connect with parents and provide resources and suggestions and guidance and even leading through example. And so I think that, this is a great resource that I plan to explore. So thank you for sharing. And I think that society has changed because even when they talked about the grocery store, people aren't necessarily taking kids in. They're shopping, they're just ordering and having it put in the car. So I don't know. It's pretty powerful short segment. So thank you.
Thanks, Desiree. I appreciate you adding to the conversation in the frame of the mobile pickup, right? It's a great handy convenience, but we're missing that connection. So social connection, love that. Amy, I saw your hand up, and then Tammy afterwards.
Yeah, I was just thinking as a direct care provider, that it's a really great conversation to have maybe at a staff meeting with my teachers, to think about. There was one particular point they were talking about all of the direct kinds of commands that we have with children, right? And so that does happen, right? Okay, let's get lined up. Okay, let's wash our hands. Let's do this. Let's do that. And, kind of having them reflect on the routines in their day and how many times can they really focus on having conversations, and thinking about how much more important it is that we do have family dining when we have our meal times, right? That the teachers do sit down and have those meals and sit and just have conversations with them, because yes, there are parts of the day that just have to be sort of more directed and do cause those other comments to come out. But that every other time when you've got just a few kids coming in the morning and you can sit and actually chat with those first few kids that come in, and the ones that are there at the end of the day, and any other moment you have during the day, to just have conversations, to really have them think more deeply about that and reflect on those opportunities.
Thank you, Amy and Tammy. And I should remind, if you wouldn't mind reiterating, if you could introduce yourself. Tammy, Kathy, and Mauritis.
I'm Tammy Benham. I'm with Southeast Kansas Library System. I'm thrilled that you introduced this, and I love it because when Dolly Parton's Imagination Library was funded throughout the state, I was very excited about that. But a book without instructions about how to use that with young children is a tool. Just like a hammer, if you don't know what to do with a hammer, it's just a tool, right? So this is leading us into, this is what you do with this book. This is how you use this book to talk to young children. And speaking as a librarian and who works with young children in early childhood, I don't see librarians using a lot of this language. So think about individuals in community organizations, and there are a lot of them that work with young children and families who aren't using this strategy or who aren't modeling this strategy when they work with young children and families. And if we all across the state are using the same strategies and the same kind of language when we're talking to families and when we're working directly with young children, then how much stronger this could be in supporting the development of families across the state. So thank you very much for sharing this resource.
Thank you, Tammy. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Gray, and I teach future educators at Butler Community College. And so this is a topic that I talk about with my students. We recently, just last week, talked about the importance of asking thoughtful questions of young children. And rather than asking those closed-ended questions, asking those open-ended questions, and really planning those. It's a skill that they have to practice. But I wanted to share that one of the things that was so powerful during COVID, and COVID forced us to kind of innovate, right? We weren't allowing parents to come in the building, but I was looking for a way to include the parents in the classroom. And so one thing I came up with was a Google document that had a question of the day that we used that all the children answered. That was kind of our, to support oral language. But the parents were so excited about creating short little videos on their phone. And then I would show that to the children. So the parents were involved in asking the question of the children. And it got so much more traction from the children than if I had just posed the question myself every day. And the parents just ran with it. They came up with the most creative ways of asking the question. So it was really powerful. It was just a great example of how you can include families in this and kind of model it for them through a learning activity. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a great share. Mauritis.
Thank you. This is Maritas. I look at it as literacy is different. It's the same, but it's different for a child who is visually impaired. And so I think of it as being intentional. When working with a child that's visually impaired, literacy is multisensory. It's built through touch, sound, movement, and language. So for a child who has sensory loss, literacy or oral language is paired also with mental imagery, especially if they cannot see what it is. For example, if this is not language, but if you're looking at pictures, if you're sighted and looking at pictures, for a child who's visually impaired, you feel the textures or objects that represent with the story, and then you pair that with oral language. So I really appreciate the opportunity to listen to the podcast briefly.
That was a powerful reminder, honestly, and one that was very humbling. That it's so much more layered and nuanced than just what we said. So This is the seventh podcast, and so hence the 07. In the resource on the side, just some reminders of resources that are on the cabinet's website. The Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. If you have not spread that through your community, please do. There's actually an early childhood and literacy document that promotes very much what we've shared. And Marita said, almost makes me think that that would be a really good update to include children that have disabilities within the early, making sure that that is really called out in our own document. And just also wanted to see and catch, we have a family-friendly workplace work group, right? And if anybody caught the statement by Commissioner Watson as a benefit to the family-friendly workplace, that's bringing your infant to work in those, birth to 6 months. And he really called out that because of that family-friendly workplace policy that state agencies promote, that he feels like they are a part of that system of that early language for children. So that is a benefit that we don't call out very often, and really appreciated him sharing that, and that is not just good for the child, for families, but it also is adds to that oral language development. So really wanted to share that and call that out to the family-friendly workplace work group. If you all didn't catch that, like that was the first thing I heard when I saw that. Trina, I see you have your hand raised. If you want to come off mute, introduce yourself and share any comments.
Sure. Trina Morgan with Kansas Children's Service League. And I did catch that, Melissa.
Yes.
And we have the same policy. And I have had the benefit of that. I am beyond the age of having babies, but I get to have babies at the office. And we have a gentleman right now in our Wichita office who's our first dad that's bringing his baby to work, and getting to watch him interact with his baby while he's walking him up and down the hallway, but also the rest of us getting to interact with baby and talk to baby and all of those things throughout the day. It did make me realize how enriched. And I have kids that when I first started here at KCSL are now in, first grade and stuff, and they were the first office babies. And it's not just enriching to the child, but for, again, those of us that are out of that stage in life, but love it so much. It is a joy to be in the office and hear that little one down the hallway. I look forward to the days that he's here, and we have that with all of them. So I will say it's not just the child that benefits. It's almost like a wellness thing for us employees, because it also reminds us of why we're doing what we're doing. I get a visual cue of that. That's why I'm here, is to help babies like this grow and thrive. So I do think policies like that, and I appreciated him calling that out, that for their staff, but it is a good reminder for others that that may not have that policy, that they could do that.
Yeah, I was super excited when he called that out, and just appreciate it. I highly recommend digging into their podcast. There's their resource on YouTube, and wanting to share with our great within our ecosystem all of these wonderful pieces of work that are going on. So glad you all enjoyed it. Really, again, made me very excited. I have personally a good friend who's an elementary reading recovery teacher in our school district here in Hayes. And she blew up her phone immediately afterwards, thanking her for what she does and all that she has strived for her community. And she's thinking about retiring. And I'm like, no, you can't. We're going to be lost without you and all that you do. So really This was my, Trina, I'm glad you said like this was your visual cue. This was my, this was my census on hyperdrive cue of why we continue to do the work after I listened to it. So, all right, thank you. And we will move on. Okay, well, now we're going to do our third round of panel introductions. And please, so we can stay on time, if we can limit it to 1 to 2 minutes. I'm not going to pull out a timer, but if we can, so we can still get to hear what everybody's doing and great things and why you're here, but then making sure that we can continue moving on with the rest of our day. And so we're going to start first with Mallory.
Think maybe not here.
Okay, so we'll transition straight to Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah on my phone, so if I break up, I apologize. Sarah Bloom. I'm with the Kansas Department of Commerce. I'm the Quality Places Director, and I have a division that oversees childcare and housing and placemaking and tax credits and all the fun things that make our communities a great place to live. And so with that division, I have been kind of appointed as the child care lead for commerce. We don't necessarily have a lot of programs for childcare. We have a couple of grants and things, but we recognize the importance of childcare when it comes to economic development in our workforce. And so we are kind of in the background working on childcare with all of you wonderful partners and making sure that we still have a good pulse of what's going on and that we're being as effective and as good partners as we can in this work. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks, Sarah. And I don't believe we have Megan with us today, so we'll move straight to Kathy Gray.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you here today. My name is Kathy Gray. This is my second year on the Early Childhood Recommendations panel. I am the department chair of the Early Childhood Education program at Butler Community College, based in Andover, Kansas. And I would say one thing I want you to know about me is that I am really passionate about inspiring and preparing the early childhood workforce in Kansas, because young children need skilled care and they need quality early learning experiences. That's one thing we all have in common that we share is that commitment, right? So over the past 26 years, I've had several roles. I have been a family child care provider, NAFCC accredited. I taught preschool and kindergarten, and I worked at the state level on grant-funded projects. And so I've lived in Kansas for 23 years, and I truly can say that I am a homegrown early childhood professional, thanks to all of the education and quality initiatives that have been available to me as an early childhood professional. And so it's a privilege to do this important work alongside all of you, and I look forward to a productive year.
Thank you, Kathy. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen McCrory. I'm the Assistant Director of Mitchell County Partnership for Children. We are an early childhood block grant funded organization that supports private and public preschool and childcare facilities in about a 4,000 square mile area here in north central Kansas. So over the last 10 years, we have worked with Osborne to create their first 4-year-old preschool program. A few years later, then helping them create a 3-year-old preschool program as well. We supported Lakeside as they created their 3-year-old preschool program, and then a few years later helped Lakeside to add 3 childcare facilities in their district. Worked with Lucas to expand their 3-year-old preschool from 1 half day to 5 half days a week. Worked with Lincoln to add 3-year-old preschool to their existing 4-year-old preschool program, then walked alongside them as they expanded to do all-day 3-year-old and 4-year-old preschool, as well as creating a childcare facility there. We added 3-year-old preschool in Beloit, and now I'm seem to be experiencing my 5 minutes of fame for having moved a building from a district that wasn't using it here to Beloit so that we can now accommodate 63-year-olds in our half-day program. And we are in the process in Beloit of supporting the development of 2 new childcare programs. It is my passion for early childhood that really drives my willingness to step up and talk to superintendents and talk to school boards to really help them connect that importance of childcare facilities in their communities. And so I just really love strengthening the partnerships between USDs and childcare.
Thank you, Karen. And I had a complete visual because I'm a Western Kansas girl. And so I could see exactly the highways, the 2-lane highways that as you were going through that path. It's a really pretty path out there by Lincoln. Natalie.
Good morning. I'm Natalie McClain. I'm the preschool programs coordinator on the early childhood team at the Kansas State Department of Education. I'm coming up on my 8th year here at KSDE, beginning on January 1st. Though I started my career as an elementary school teacher, I was fortunate to come into a Head Start program where I learned so much about early childhood. I worked in different capacities in Head Start for about 14 years before joining the early childhood team here at KSDE. In my current position, I love that I get to work with school districts across the state of Kansas. My work includes lots of collaboration with early childhood partners across the state agencies to improve services provided for young children and families across the state. This work is really focused on things like updating our Kansas early learning standards, working on the Kansas core competencies updates, transitions to kindergarten, and high quality teaching practices, especially learning through play. That's my favorite. My favorite days are the ones that I get to go into the classrooms and visit and play with the amazing teachers and children in our schools. Away from work, I'm the wife of a middle school teacher and a coach, and a mom of 2 super talented young men. My oldest is grown, and my youngest is a sophomore in high school. And I'm sporting my football mom shirt today. I've been here on the panel since it began and love the opportunities it provides to make connections and to collaborate with our early childhood experts from across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And I love that you're supporting your local school and your family. So love that. I hope they win. Okay, April, because Tabitha is not here, correct, Lindsay? Okay, if we move on to April then.
Hi, I'm April Schumann. I live in Wichita for the past 10 years, where I'm owner and educator of Gigi's Childcare Home. I previously resided in the rural Haven Yoder area and operated Little Buckaroo's Family Childcare. I graduated from Haven High and moved to Pratt, where I was hired by USD 382 as a playground monitor and after-school teacher with parents as teachers and a special education paraprofessional with South Central Kansas Education Cooperative. Following the birth of my first child 33 years ago, I opened a regulated family childcare home, and later becoming licensed as my family grew. I homeschooled all my children and taught horsemanship at Hutchinson Community College. After moving to Wichita, I wanted to stay in the early childhood field, so I worked in 2 centers and observed at 3 others, deciding that the center-based was not for me. I enjoyed the home childcare aspect. So after I got remarried, I opened my current childcare program here at the house. And I serve local families during the week and provide care for military families during deployment or drill weekends through McConnell Air Force Base. When needed, they don't have a lot of need for it, but I am open to them. My child care is accredited from the National Association for Family Child Care. I'm Lind endorsed, a Nature Explore classroom, a breastfeeding friendly and clean air childcare. Throughout my career, I've supported families and young children in my community, focusing on their early childhood development, both professionally and personally. My husband and I have served as foster parents with a license exception granted for former child care family, and I've acted as an educational advocate for 9 foster children. Our family includes 6 children, the 5 bonus children, and 10 grandchildren. I'm also involved in several organizations. I serve on the board of directors for the Kansas Association of Infant and Mental Health, CAME, and Child Care Providers Coalition, and I'm serving as vice president for the 25 through 26 year. I participate in early childhood professional organization board of directors, and I'm active in the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition. I joined the recommendation panel to support child development and positively impact future generations, my own family, child care families, and children in Kansas who lack a voice.
So April, you're not busy at all.
No, not really.
Well, we are very lucky as the panel to have your wealth of experience and diversity in representing both you and Desiree representing home providers. So really appreciate your participation. I'm just tired now listening. That's I hope you find time for yourself through all of that. So thank you for all that you do. And then we'll move on to Jenny.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Smith. I am currently the Parents as Teachers Bright Futures Affiliate Director, which pretty much means Bright Futures is a Family First Prevention Services grant through the Kansas Department of Children and Families. And so what I do is we receive referrals from them for children that are at imminent risk of entering foster care. So we provide them with PAT services, more intense PAT services for 1 year. And I also provide parents as teachers with professional development and training. And I have a background, I've done pretty much it all when it comes to early childhood. I've been a Head Start classroom teacher. I've had my own home daycare when I decided to stay home with my youngest child. And also with Head Start, I've been an education coordinator before. Shout out to David Brock. He's on here. He was my old boss. I'm from McPherson County. On a personal level, my family, we ranch, and we have 3 boys that are 20, 17, and 13, and we're highly involved in high school rodeo and traveling all over the state. And I've served in Parents as Teachers as a parent educator in the past for Saline County, and I'm just excited to be a part of this really great group of amazing people.
Thank you, Jenny. We're excited to have you also. And we will move to Rebecca.
Good morning. I'm Becky Stewart from the Supporting Care Providers of Kansas program. I am current program director, and I have been a part of the program since 2017. So really excited. In the last 3 years, we changed our mission to focus on family, friend, and neighbor child care providers, as we understand that they're an essential component of our early childhood ecosystem. And these providers are our grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, family, or friends. And I'm really passionate about family choice and being able to choose who they want to care for their children. So our mission is to offer a comprehensive program designed to support these providers and ensure they have the tools and resources they need to create optimal learning environments for young children, fostering their development and school readiness. And so it was really exciting listening to Dr. Watson's podcast about the early literacy, because what we do on our first enrollment visit is look to see what kind of books the children have access to. And if they don't, we always leave a book on every visit. But that first visit, we ensure that provider has enough books that every child has the opportunity to read a book. So we don't want any child waiting to share a book. So that was pretty exciting as he was sharing that information. We are a home visiting program, and our providers are in our program for a minimum of 2 years, and they can have bi-monthly or monthly visits depending on their needs. And we use the parents as teachers supporting care providers through personal visits curriculum, which is an evidence-based curriculum that we follow. And I'm really excited. I've been in the early childhood world for quite some time. I too had a licensed family child care home for close to 25 years, then worked in childcare aware with the KQRIS system, and then came into home visiting through parents as teachers after that work, and then moved on into this work. So really passionate about children and families in Kansas, and look really forward to being a part of this panel.
Thank you, Becky. And then Abdul.
Yes, thank you. Abdul Yahya with Open Minds. I am an entrepreneur and engineer. My wife and I, we have 2 centers here in the northeast state side of the state in Olathe, where we educate nearly 200 students. And although my career path didn't start in early education, it definitely led this way due to the importance of early ed. I have a degree in civil engineering from Kansas State University. So even though I'm on the northeast side, I love Western Kansas by all my friends and the connections. Hayes, you keep mentioning Hayes. A lot of my colleagues were from Hayes or that area. The best engineers are the individuals come from a farm because it's hands-on engineering. But I'm excited to be part of this program because I speak about my engineering experience because I used to design roads and infrastructure, but now I have the opportunity to design the transformational infrastructure of early education. And our whole goal when we started our business 10 years ago was to elevate what we do in early ed. And so I'm so excited to be part of this program. This is my first year serving on the committee.
Thank you. Well, again, favorite part of every meeting so far, because I am just bowled away and just amazed still about the panel members, very humbled to be in your presence, even though it's virtually, because you all represent such a varied and deep skill set and bring such passion to the work. So again, very humbled to be your chair and be a part of this little ecosystem. So now we will move on. So we're going to move on to the work groups. And I had an opportunity to review your notes. And so if we can move forward to the next slide, Lindsay, just reminding the work groups you were charged with to identify opportunities for and barriers to how agency programs coordinate. How do we better improve our line in the early childhood system? And, again, the depth chart here is very deep when we look at all of just the skills that you bring in addition to the larger agencies that you represent. And then we hope at the end of the year that you come forth with a recommendation. But again, that's not truly always what we want to achieve. What we want to achieve is good, rich conversation that moves the dial in early childhood. And I think an example of that was just the information and the sharing back and forth that we learned from the podcast that we saw today, and skills that you might take, even if it's one little pebble in it. When you think about, you throw that into a lake and the ripple effect that one little pebble can have. That's what I hope that the visual that you guys take away with this panel. But as we dig deeper into the work groups, really had our first work groups meet last month. And I apologize. I am fighting a cold, and so I'm on the tail end, and so my voice keeps cracking, so I apologize. But what we learned within our first work group session is I joined the systems group. and really want to honor. You guys are volunteering. This is a volunteer, even though you applied, it's still taking times from your very, very busy schedules. And that's illustrated when you share out. But we really wanted to honor everybody's, ask. And the systems group, they were very passionate about the ecosystem. And so I took a minute, stepped back from last month's meeting, and we decided to have a, ecosystem 1 and ecosystem 2. And I say that loosely because what we're going to do today is we're going to let that whole ecosystem group meet and then decide based off of what their interest level is that we can, have subgroups within that earlier group or that larger group. And then we have our family-friendly workplaces, targeted journey recruitment, and mental health supports. And then what we're going to do as we move through the slides this morning, this is work in real time, meaning that, I put together a structure, but if it doesn't work as we're reporting out, we can pivot and we can adapt and we can, we're going to learn through this process because work groups were used to doing, work separate and in isolation, and that was great. And then they would have a larger report out at the end of the panel work. But we're going to be doing those report outs in real time, monthly. And what I noticed as I was reviewing all of your notes, that there's tons of opportunity for cross collaboration and that you actually all have some really aligned, targeted initiatives. And so that we're not working in isolation, I wanted you all to hear what each work group was doing so that if you wanted to pivot again in real time within your own work groups, you guys can do that. And we're going to honor the placement of each group, meaning that some of you were a little bit more robust in sharing, slides back that you wanted us to put on screen today. And then again, some, we're still lining pillars and still lining work groups with a strategic plan. And there was no, as Commissioner Watson said, there's no magic sauce to this. We're just going to learn and practice in real time. And it may be a little bit messy as we're trying to share out very early on with the work groups. And again, that's okay. And I had to give myself permission for that being okay too, because I'm a really very organized person and realized that this is, work in real time. And then we want to elicit discussion across from panel members. So if you aren't specifically in the mental health supports, but you got really excited about something that you're doing in your own agency and you want to share with that group, like this is the time to be able to share your content expertise, even though you're not in that work group. So let's just have at it. Okay, so the first work group we're going to start with is the family-friendly workplaces. And I went into your notes and may have made them, a little bit smaller and condensed some of your conversation. But the idea for this first work group is they're working on, and I say this loosely, is a family-friendly work designation. And they've aligned some of their, strategic plans. And then I added in some data sources and resources that they may want to look at is, 2024 needs assessment, local sources such as, we have a lot of our communities in action work that was done through our CCA funded work where they did some initial assessments of communities, making sure that you're not missing some data points that were already conducted. And then, anything that you all as a panel may want to share. And then their next step, we're exploring just exactly as I laid out, looking at some childcare aware, KCSL, very specific family-friendly workplace initiatives that they can mirror. Love that we also talked about the mental health benefits and how that could possibly align with some of our mental health supports. Looking at a pilot initiatives versus a statewide designation. Learning at a smaller level through a pilot is always very beneficial. Saw some of the notes of the benefits of that. And then they're wanting to make community and businesses aware of family-friendly workplace and looking at a communication plan. And then also dropped in the slide from Mandy's previous share out to the full panel of the business summit that was hosted by Child Start with some really specific benchmarks that were identified through that business summit that the family-friendly workplace work group might want to share. So I'm just going to pause, as then this morning we had received a slide from that work group, and if we want to move that to the next one, and this was some of their work, and then I am going to like I said, pause and let anybody from that work group, share out and report some of that initial conversation that you had, some aha moments. And then if they're, after listening from the expertise of this full panel, if there's anything that you would like to ask of the panel that might move your work forward. So I see Melissa has raised her hand, and I'll pass it over to Melissa.
Hi, Melissa Martin with Sparkquill. So one of the aha moments for us really occurred, I think, between our last meeting last year, for those of us who were on this panel in the work group at that time, and our first couple of meetings this year. And one of the things that we have really struggled with is trying to find the home. And it, honestly, we'd come up with several ideas, a couple of recommendations, but nothing was ever landing on that. And so I think our aha moment was, first of all, there are already at least 2 family-friendly workplace designations functioning in the state within nonprofit agencies, both of which have representation on the panel. But it then began to occur to us that perhaps it's actually more of a collaboration and a cooperative, in that Kansas has a family-friendly workplace plan that employers can achieve and so forth, but the same plan for designation is administered by more than one entity. So we're going to have a guest in our work group this morning to talk with us about what that would look like with their agency. One of our members is with one of the agencies. And so we'll start talking through a completely different idea of having it land with one agency, and instead land on one family-friendly workplace designation that could be shared among agencies around the state as applicable to their work, their clients, their students, depending on who they are. So I think that was a big moment for us to make that shift in where we felt like we were landing the designation.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate your report and summary. And now I'm going to open it up to see if there are folks, panel members that are not part of the work group after seeing some of the ideas, the spark. No pun intended, Melissa, but I love the spark. So I think that you guys had a spark and you had a moment. If there's anybody who would like to add information, ask a question of the family-friendly workplace work group. Oh, Sarah Bloom has a question.
Good morning. I just want to make sure I'm reading the bullet correctly. Sarah Bloom, Kansas Department of Commerce, sorry. You're looking at a state agency to do this, or you're not? It says
We
not,
are,
I believe.
yes.
Okay.
For a long time we were, and now we are not looking for a state agency. We worked on that direction for so long, and it just was not going to happen.
Sure. So what type of agency are you looking at? And if it's not a state agency, maybe it's a local one, do you feel they will have the capacity to do this? Or are you looking for multiple? You're looking for a home, so I just want to make sure logistics are at the
Sure.
forefront.
Well, for instance, Child Care Aware and KCSL both currently have a family-friendly workplace designation of some kind. And so, for instance, we have a guest today in our work group from Child Care Aware. Trina Morgan, who's a member of the panel, is with KCSL. And so we want to start with the two agencies that are already doing some work in this regard. Once we can ideally get agreement that everyone, this panel, folks currently doing this on the same designation, practice, and program, then we would start talking to other agencies to get others involved as they might be. So, there are always gaps in communities where neither, of those programs might have the capacity, but maybe there's another one. And certainly I would, I feel like I'm speaking for KCSL and Child Care Aware in the moment. We're having our very first actual conversation about this today. But if anybody from our work group or from those agencies wants to, respond to this, would be great.
So, Melissa, I think what I've gathered from your notes, and I don't want to speak for your group, and just your summary, it's really moving away from the term designation, but looking at putting forth a recommendation, possibly, in the future that might look at policy and adoption and more a framework for and I don't want to use the word agencies because it could be any business. I mean, really, let's go more globally and go, like the 5,000-foot level, but more any sort of business can adopt. And I'm really excited to see what you guys continue to move forward with. Patty, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, and this just brought up thinking the earlier video with Dr. Watson and talking about the infants at work. And I was just curious. I think Kansas has such a hidden gem with so many state agencies that do the infants at work program. And I'm not for sure, I'm not as familiar with the family-friendly workplaces work, but I think highlighting and really tapping into that, the system that Kansas has had for, as far as I know, 20 plus years about supporting infants at work. And I think there's some real great opportunities and really getting more word out there about what the state of Kansas does to support infants at work.
Yeah, we agree totally. And that kind of thing is very much a part of the framework that we've already created based on conversations with other states that have very successful family-friendly workplace programs. So we very much, want to make use of what folks are already doing, whether it's in state agencies or whether it is in, a business located anywhere in the state, that kind of thing, or in a nonprofit located. We certainly feel like we have a strong family-friendly workplace program at our agency. So that is very much part of what we want to do. We have been working very hard not to recreate the wheel, although a few times it's more almost like organizing everything that is happening, because there is so much good stuff happening in this realm. And I think getting it organized and getting it just shaped up in a way that it can really be shared with businesses and agencies and nonprofits and, any concern around the state. That's what we're going for.
Okay, and then I'm going to let Christy Smith speak, and then we're going to move on to the next work group so we can get through all of our work groups today. So Christy?
Sure. So Christy Smith with Child Care Aware of Kansas, and we obviously Melissa, it aligns perfectly with the work that we're doing, but to take it even further, we were able to receive funding to focus on community designations that will include family-friendly businesses into that aspect of things. So just really high level, I'll reach out to you. I'll also KCSL, because that was on our radar as well, but we've aligned it very similar to the breastfeeding designation. Like we felt it was important to kind of follow the same type of theme, to where it feels the same if an employer is going to go in that route, as well as same as going to the route of taking it up to community. And this would fit in just really nicely. We just want to make sure that it all aligns. If they receive like a community designation, how many, for example, would be family-friendly workplaces that would be in there? How many breastfeeding family-friendly would be in there? So I would say I'll reach out to y'all
Please
at
do.
a different level. But yeah, just wanted to share that with you.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
Absolutely.
And I think the sharing out, and Christy, you sort of did a nice little softball, to me, is why it's important, because there's so many nuances of the work going on at the same time, and how we don't always have the capacity to know what everybody's doing. But the panel really serves as that space to be able to share. So love that, Christy. And you actually just illustrated what I was taking a quick little note as a summary later on. So I was able to share it now. Christy, did you have something else you want to add?
I was just going to say the hard part with this is and I don't know how we get there, but like this was a work in progress of our strategic plan that we've aligned with All In for Kansas Kids, right? And so we've had this conversation, but it hasn't been launched. So it's really hard that is a missing element, Melissa. Like, how do we get others to say, hey, we're starting to think about this space, we're trying to get some funding, which we did. And it's like, so how do we, light bulb moment, right? How do we help to say these are our, I don't even say work in action, because they're ideas on our bucket list is what I would say. And it came full force. And I don't know how we capture that, but that's something else to think about too as this work goes on. So.
Yep. Well, I'm going to put a shout out to anybody who's also listening to the live stream that the panel is a perfect place to bring ideas and share new initiatives. So very much a light bulb moment for the system too, Christy. So I appreciate that. Let's move on to the next one. And so the next one is our targeted journey group. And you'll see some of their ideas stem from their continued work on from the 2024-2025 panel is the alignment between KDHE and KSDE requirements specific to the high school pathways, promise scholarship, alignment of training. If you're a paraeducator and you want to then work in a child care facility, especially where there's finite staff and resources, what can we do in communities to support that more? And then in just overall improving recruitment efforts at local levels and visibility. And then some of the needs, the 2024 needs assessment that they can look at as a data resource, the specific CASITO workforce study, career pathway data, and don't even know if this exists, but I put it on here, Patty Peschel's on here, but what data exists from understanding the CASITO early childhood high school foundations model? What school districts are using that, and can we use that as a blueprint within the work, because it's not recreating the wheel, but all of that. And, just met Heather Campbell this week, honestly, at a different function with the KSDE CT information. And I know the work group specifically was going to reach out to her. So there's and really then reframing how we use the word pathway too, because the way we use the career pathway in the early childhood system, and then realized we had a difference in language with KSDE and CTE in the way Heather Campbell was using the word pathway. And so just making sure we're aligning. So honestly, even just coming up with a glossary blueprint to understand within the pathway might be beneficial. But really want to, highlight this is the work of the targeted journey. And if there's anybody who would like to share out, aha moments, things that you really want to focus in on, and if the panel has any questions or feedback. So I'm just going to pause and then throw it to the work group first and see if there's anybody that would like to share anything, that you have planned specifically moving forward when you meet today or your next encounter together.
Hi, Becca Meitler, instructor early childhood education at Kansas State University. Happy to hear that there are other Wildcats in the Zoom room. We, as a work group, I am new to the panel this year. I know this work group did a lot of work in the previous years. There are multiple repeat workforce and targeted journey recruitment members, which we're so thankful for. Big shout out to Desiree and Kim for taking on co-lead of this group. And a lot of behind the scenes work is happening. Melissa really covered many of our thoughts and ideas that we discussed in our first meeting. We are planning to again meet with Heather Campbell and talk with KSDE to refine some of that information and see how we can work with multiple state agencies in just refining some of the quote unquote, what we call pathways from high school so that students are leaving prepared to join the workforce very quickly after graduation. We also have been in discussion the 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, and how we can partner better to prepare that part of the workforce. The paraeducators in the workforce is something that was brought up at our first meeting, and I think it's just such a great idea. My previous 5 years in the field prior to this, I was working in a school district unified preschool program with paraeducators, many of them looking for employment on breaks and outside of our school year. And so that's something that we are excited about looking into. We want to make sure we are using appropriate verbiage that transfers over to CTE programming across professions as well. I think that will help refine our discussions. So we're excited and looking forward to additional work, seeing how we can get a little bit more refinement here. Amy's going to hop on. Thanks, Amy.
Amy Gottchammer with Googles of Learning in Lawrence. I was just going to add too that we're also looking at how we can align training in the high schools through the CTE programs to make sure that all the training that they get is also something that is recognizable for the CDA credential. So wherever possible, whether or not in some early childhood programs at the high school level, the students are actually completing their CDAs, but some are not. And whether or not that becomes universal across Kansas is up for discussion. But if it is not, at least if the training is really clear and syllabi are discussed and we know what they've got so that the council can recognize what that training is, then when they enter the workforce, then as a director like myself, I can then help them and guide them and mentor them through the rest of their professional development, know what kind of coursework they've taken, have certificates that I can show to CDA and say, hey, here's what they've already got. This is what they still need, and help them complete that CDA while they're in my employment.
Thank you, Amy. And I wanted to now throw it out to the panel. If anybody has any questions or feedback for the targeted journey recruitment group. Okay, just wanting to remind everybody, threw in some data sources. If there is any footwork that you would like for myself or, as the panel support system, that you guys need resources, please, any work group, please let us know and we will definitely get you connected. But love that you are all making those natural connections yourself and doing that. So we're going to move on to the mental health supports. So mental health supports had a event yesterday, or 2 days ago. I forget, today's Friday, and October 15th, and they really brought together our local mental health facilities across the state to really start having, and those interested in this mental health journey and supporting children and families to really address and start that conversation and looking at the local needs, family struggles, some of their ideas, discussing parent isolation, and then the child experience in, very childcare settings. And we really should be more loose and really say any type of caregiving settings. And then they're also working on help inform the early childhood mental health gap analysis. So really looking forward to that final report. And then making sure that there's any resources geared towards families, providers, that those are updated on the All In for Kansas Kid website. They're still working on identifying their specific pillars and goals, and their continued discussion is in their focus areas for their work group, really using that conversation that I believe happened on Wednesday to help be part of that driver for that work. So I am going to pause and let somebody from the mental health supports work group, if add to any of anything I've already laid out.
Good morning. It's Megan Cluth. I'm with the University of Kansas Center for Public Partnerships and Research. My co-chair, Mandy Waugh, is taking her own mental health vacation today with her family, so I will speak for her. Not a lot to add. I think Melissa set us up really well. We will talk, as she said, about the event earlier this week, which was had a lot of really rich conversation, and I think will help our group kind of figure out like what feels like the most impactful area we can work in. We also pulled together some different data from the state and nationally about kind of a variety of different factors that influence early childhood mental health. I think the opportunity as well as the challenge of early childhood mental health is it's a huge topic, and everything from what do we need to know about what's directly impacting young kids and their mental health from just everyday life through if they have a diagnosis and need a more of a formal intervention through how do we support families and caregivers' mental health, and then our workforce. A lot of the conversation at the event earlier this week was about we've got early childhood and mental health workforces that I think obviously have their own mental health needs, and how do we make sure we're addressing those? So I think today we're going to dig into some of that data, talk more about the event, and really figure out like there's so many things we could do, and what feels like kind of the best next step for this group. So excited to share more in November.
Thank you. And Megan, when you talk about the workforce, we're not always just limited to care providers. We also support our home visitors. And we recently had their home visiting conference, and as a workforce, they discuss their own mental health needs too. So it's just appreciate that this group has looked at the full spectrum, and just very excited to hear more. Any panel questions for the this work group?
This is Trina. I just want to say thank you, Melissa, for bringing up the home visitors. As a former home visitor and former home visitor supervisor, thank you for bringing up that workforce. Appreciate that.
Of course, we wouldn't, anybody really connecting with children is a part of this work. So yes. Okay, hearing no questions, we will move on to the ecosystem. So I will have to share this. We received slides from the ecosystem work group, and I had already created my slide based off of their notes. But my slide doesn't really give their work any justice because there's a full slide deck coming up that I just really want to say appreciate the work that really gave an idea of the passion as we're moving into the Office of Early Childhood, thinking about these natural bridges and opportunities and new bridges being built in real time. That in all of the work going on with grants that are housed within the children's cabinet, things that are going on at our resource and referral agencies across the state, and at the local level, right? It's exhausting. So the ecosystem is they're just moving. And so you'll see that some very early ideas were about employer collaboration, which we'd heard with the family-friendly workplace, tax credits and family awareness, which could go in multiple pillars. So really wanted to share this. Really intrigued and curious where they would move with the USD, the school district expansions, where school districts are stepping into childcare, not just the traditional pre-K, but really also looking at as a family-friendly workplace by offering facilities for their staff and their community, filling different types of gaps in care. And then school districts also, putting forth parents as teachers. So really supporting the whole early childhood across, multiple entry points. The home provider and the ecosystem connection. Our home providers are our biggest benchmark of facilities across the state, making sure that they're not lost within this larger ecosystem. Consulting services, ASQ. And then they're really looking at their next steps were, possibility convening a roundtable with local chambers, commerce, and HR leaders. Really saw then that natural collaboration with the family-friendly workplace. What does that look like? How can, we make sure that we are moving together cohesively? And the employer child care incentive guide, host a, USD, school district and community planning sessions. Loved, the pilot library-led story hours targeted to home providers. What does that, and I say this loosely as a toolkit, look like moving forward? And then map and summarize existing TA resources, state and local. And then, wanting to, make sure that we have system points and check-ins and discussing, what's going on at a higher level, because many of you guys may have heard that we have a new workforce registry, CAPE. And really CAPE is looking at right now, building out a very, starting at a foundational level, the TA across the state and what that looks like for anybody who uses CAPE. So making sure we're not duplicating efforts across the state, and what can you guys, offer maybe to the CAPE workforce registry work and ideas. But that's based off of the notes. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to let Christy or Abdul come off mute, whoever wants to, and then we're going to start sharing your slides. So Lindsay, if we can move to the next slide, and then and you guys just tell us when you guys want the slide deck moved forward.
All right, thank you. Abdul Yahai with Open Minds. I was asked to report out for our committee. And Melissa, you mentioned about what was that aha moment, and what kind of we spoke about was for the last 20 years, we really did a good job about promoting what early education is. 80% of brain development is developed before age 5 and all that. But what's the next transition? How do we build an ecosystem where people really understand the importance of it? And so what came up in that was employee retention equals early childhood attention. So it's very important that we get collaborations from all of the stakeholders that directly work with early education, but also benefit from our ecosystem in Kansas. So our slides are very intentional in our affirmation statement. So we're saying we are building a system of care, community, attention, retention, and ecosystem. So the next slide speaks on what that is. We want to be community inspired, attention to the needs of Kansas families, retention of Kansas workforce. And that's in early education, but also individuals that don't directly work with early education. This is all of Kansas, and that retention starts at the early education level. And then the ecosystem collaboration. If nothing else with COVID, it taught us all agencies need to come together and collaborate. And early education was at the forefront of that time frame. And so we took that and moved into our ideas. And these are a few of our ideas. There's actually 6 of them. I won't go into detail, but what I loved about our ideas is that it was on 3 different levels. We talked about the centers, we talked about the in-homes, and we also talked about the community agencies. So this slide is talking about, okay, what are the centers' needs? Centers aren't full. I know that there's a need, but why aren't centers full if we have such a great need? And so just really working through the strategic plan, the workforce, and how do we build a pathway to make sure that centers that have capacity are also meeting the needs of the community. And then our last meeting, we talked about this tax credit. And taxes are just one of those things that people, it's always changing, so it's hard to understand. But if you can bring it down to a level where the families like this is going to benefit you, and then also the workforce is going to benefit them, we need to be able to have some type of pamphlet or anything that a family can take to their employer who participates in this. Because what we don't want is that gap in the ecosystem where families have to choose between childcare or work or vice versa. We want to make sure that all of our children are being educated. So that's on the global level there. On the next slide, we talk about school districts, and we love school districts. At the governor's state of the state address, she talked about how in our rural areas, some of our school districts, that is the community hub. And so as a entrepreneur that owns a center, I'm not offended or scared about the collaboration of early education going into the school district. It's just how do we utilize that and collaborate? And so we're really looking to see case studies on how early education moving into the school systems benefits the whole ecosystem, because the important part is that we do have this system of care, that there is no gaps. And I love libraries. I was raised in a library. I mean, my background, I'm from Nigeria. And so the way that my parents and I learned English and all that is in the library, right? But that oral literacy is very important. So the collaboration of what libraries are doing and how those toolkits can transition and help our in-home providers. Once again, we try to touch on the whole ecosystem. And then the third slide is definitely talking about our agencies and what we have out in the system. Kansas is, I feel like, a trendsetter. I mean, I love our slides. We have the stars. We're looking towards the stars in terms of we're building a center for childhood education. And so everything will be in one place because the services are important. Everyone in this room probably knows that you can't start to educate a child unless you meet their basic needs. And that goes for a family as well. We need to expand past just the child and know that we need to meet the basic needs of the family. So our committee has a lot of work tasked in front of us because these are just 6 ideas that came out of one meeting. We definitely want to hone it down and see what we can recommend at the end of this year, but I'm excited about what we're moving forward. And that's what I have to present at this time.
Thank you. And I do want to remind the Systems Communications Group, you will be joining this group. And I imagine that your next slides will expand quite drastically because you will have a whole synergy of new ideas and energy coming in out of the ecosystem. and looking forward to how you map out, and again, giving you the opportunity to make smaller work groups to address any of the ideas within the ecosystem. So we're really giving you the opportunity to establish organically where you see the work being driven. So really excited to see what's going to happen, adding those additional members. Does anybody have any questions for the ecosystem group? Bethany.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that as a part of the shared service network work, that they had a few hubs that were involved in that developed kits at different libraries around the state. And so what you were talking about with libraries just made me think of that. And so they had these kits that childcare programs in the area could like check out from the library and use with the children in their program, and then they could return them and somebody else could, another program could come in and use those. And that was actually pretty popular. So if you're interested in looking into that as a part of your group, I would reach out to Chris Nicholson at Child Care Aware. Or I'm sure Christy could make the connection if you, or I can as well, if you reach out to me. But yeah, it was just a very cool thing that the kind of that collaboration between local libraries and local childcare programs.
Can I address that really quickly?
Sure, Tammy, if you want to introduce yourself again, and then yeah.
I'm Tammy Benham with Southeast Kansas Library System. I think Talia was on this call. I'm not sure that she's still on, but Talia and I worked together to start that collaboration a couple of years ago and creating those kits, and they still exist. I think the idea that was presented here was more along the lines of programming, like a storytime program that would then be a collaboration between the at-home providers and the centers and the public library. What oftentimes we see public or child care centers that will bring the children, the whole group, into the library, which is fantastic for story time. But what we're seeing is those adults that are the child care providers need a break right then. And so they may or may not be using the strategies that they have been taught whenever we're looking at early literacy building. So expanding on that idea, but I love it that you brought that up. Those kits are still available. And if anyone, they're available throughout the state because we can send them anywhere, interlibrary loan. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
Thank you, Tammy, for expanding. Gotta love interlibrary loan. That's how I get a lot of my books. Any other questions or comments from panel members regarding the ecosystem? Okay, I'm not hearing any. I have to say I have a new favorite place of the panel, and this has been really engaging. It really exceeded my expectation as we look at common things, cross collaboration opportunities, and then again, what resources do you need to do your work and move it forward? And I think today illustrated that we are a very deep group of local and lived experts. And so, participation is important, and being able to share out as you guys did was amazing. But if you need additional information, we would be more than happy to connect the work groups. And you guys can identify that and let me know, or drop it in your notes, because I do look at all of your notes, and we will make sure and get you the support you need. So as we wind down the panel this morning, we're going to go through some systems updates, and I'm going to hand it over back over to Megan Kluth.
All right, thanks, Melissa. So I'm going to share a few updates from our preschool development grant. And hopefully these are bright spots for all of you. They certainly were. We had a quarterly meeting where we bring all of our PDG partners. There's about 28 initiatives across the grant, so it's pretty large, together in person earlier this week. So some of these are really fresh off the press. So our partners at Thrive Allen County are leading a statewide childcare health insurance reimbursement program. And I believe we're going to share a testimonial video and a little later as part of the bright spots, which really was probably the highlight of my week to get to see the impact this program is having. But this is an opportunity for childcare providers throughout the state to apply to get it's about $300 a month that they get reimbursement for health insurance. In PDG year one, which wrapped up in September, 183 childcare providers in Kansas were supported through this program. I think there were about 11 that got health insurance for the first time, which is incredible. And about 2/3 of these were family childcare providers. So there's a slight preference given, but it's a pretty good mix of care providers across settings. The program is really for the actual childcare professional, but they are able to apply for family plans as well. So I think overall, there were more than 300 people affected by the plans for people's spouses and children. We have some early data coming in. We'll have a lot more to share in the coming months. I don't think this is a surprise, but it's really nice to hear that of the providers who participated and received the insurance reimbursement, over 91% of them said that reduced their financial stress in the program. And in the video we'll see in a little bit, I think you'll see firsthand like what that actually means in people's lives. 68% said the program made them more likely to stay in the childcare field too, which I think is really significant. As many of you were thinking about retention strategies, certainly the ability for families to have access to health insurance is something to keep in mind. And then the latest for this program is they just recently wrapped up their latest application process, and they had over 600 applications from across the state. So fortunately, we're not able to fund quite that many, but I just wanted to highlight it because it's clearly shown the need for the program, and we'll have more information to share in the coming months about kind of the continued impact and who has been able to really benefit from this program moving forward. So next slide, please. Another program to highlight is customized early education. They have really grown very rapidly a childcare substitute pool program. So Robin Hanson with Customized Early Education has created this model where they partner with childcare facilities throughout the state, and they do all the like vetting, training, onboarding, all of that for substitutes, and work in partnership with those facilities so they can schedule out when people are able to come in. This data is actually out of date because the program's growing so rapidly that it's like out of date the second I say it. But as of a couple months ago, they were in 16 counties. I think it's actually more like 20 now, since they've really, the program existed before the preschool development grant started last fall, but that's really ramped up since last November. So they've added, I think, close to 20 counties at this point in a little less than a year, which equates to more than 15,000 hours of substitute coverage. What does that actually mean? That means that facilities stay open. Professionals are able to get a break and take time away for their own professional development or their own healthcare needs or just a day off to enjoy. It means that kids stay in care. It means that families can go to work. So we're really talking a lot about like the ripple effects of this program. And then I also wanted to highlight, again, I know workforce retention is always on the minds of this group, and the 83% of the substitutes who are surveyed who are part of this program have said that this has helped them either stay in or return to childcare. The program has shared, or Robin has shared several times, like there are a lot of people that for whatever reason, like being full-time in a childcare facility just didn't make sense for their life. And this has created an opportunity for a little bit more flexible scheduling and for them to kind of be able to work the number of hours that makes sense to them, or just to even like have some substitutes are very consistently at one program and some travel around. So I think this is yet another way to be thinking about how to keep facilities open so that kids can stay in care. but also look at our workforce a little bit differently and different opportunities for them to keep their talents and their passions in the workforce, but it might look a little bit different than their previous roles. Next slide. Okay. And I know I'm doing really kind of quick information on several different initiatives. So I'm happy to go into detail if anybody wants them on any of these. Another big piece of news from the preschool development grant world is our childcare zones, which are led by KDHE. We had shared a little bit about these in the past, but just as a reminder, these are grants that require 2 or more counties to come together and really create like a regional approach to childcare. So they're very locally driven in terms of what communities feel are the biggest needs for their area. But some of the things people are talking about, I think workforce recruitment and retention is big in all of the zones. Increasing qualities, there's a lot around like professional development, some new trainings being developed, resource sharing. One is creating like a lending library for different learning equipment for facilities in Southeast Kansas, employer engagement, family-friendly workplaces, different types of collaboration. School districts, I would say, is the biggest one, but we're also seeing some collaboration with faith-based communities, local governments, local businesses, and then again, really strengthening those regional partnerships. So things like bulk purchasing, we have somebody who's an expert in this in one county, can they kind of be leveraged in another county, that type of thing, and then just building general public awareness of childcare. So the news out of this group is the first year of PDG, which again wrapped up last month. There were 4 grantees. There are now 3 more, so a total of 7 grantees. And then Lindsay, if you can go to the next slide, we can show a map. So you can see here where these zones are in the counties and who the lead organization is. We would very much run out of space if we listed all the partners involved, because they are very collaborative groups. We are working on a summary of kind of like what each area is doing, so we can share that soon. And I would actually really love in the future for maybe to bring some of our zones grantees in to share a little bit more about what they're seeing in their communities. So I know that's really high level, that's intentional. They are pretty early on their projects, but certainly if you are in any of these regions and want to know more, reach out to me and I would be happy to connect you. I think there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration here with the panel and some of your work groups and just for those who are represented in these regions. So stay tuned. We are very, very excited about this initiative, and we'll have a lot more to share in the coming months. Okay, and then this is just really an FYI. So CPPR has been leading a gap analysis for PDG. So as you know, we have the All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan and needs assessment. This is really designed to be like a supplemental piece to that needs assessment. And so in year 1, we just wrapped up a gap analysis report on rural experiences. We obviously know a large percent of Kansas is rural, and we talk about needing to understand rural experiences all the time. This report is really intended to like break down a little bit more. What does that mean? Like when we say rural communities have transportation challenges, like, but what does that actually mean for a family who's driving 40 miles to get to a childcare each way? What does that mean in terms of services being delivered? What does that mean in terms of like what services are available or not available? So that report is being finalized as we speak and will be available soon. So it's a place for you to, if you need data on rural Kansas experiences related to early childhood, it's a place that we would love for you to have as a resource. It's certainly not comprehensive of every single thing, but I think it gives you a good, hopefully it gives you some good language and good data to use as we think about like how do we address rural communities, and also like acknowledging that one rural community is not the same as the next rural community. And so what are some considerations as you're going into those communities and understanding what's unique about them. And then in year 2, another gap analysis will be developed, and that will focus on early childhood mental health. So certainly a lot of opportunities there with our mental health work groups, and just there's some really nice momentum going on in the system around early childhood mental health. So As we get into that topic, we'll certainly talk about this in the mental health work group, but as other people we'll kind of share some of the like research questions that we're looking at for that. But if there are specific topics that you're like, I really wish we knew this about early childhood mental health in Kansas, let me know. We want to make sure we're representing the data that people are feeling they need. Or even if you're like, I'm not quite sure, but I want to know more about this topic. We're kind of in that phase right now of gathering that information. Next slide. Okay, and then last but certainly not least, Melissa mentioned that there was an early childhood mental health convening earlier this week in Topeka. We had almost 100 people from across the state, really from, I think, nearly every sector of early childhood and then the mental health system. So we had some childcare representation, home visiting, early intervention, the school systems. I'm sure I am missing many people, but it was pretty broad representation. And then we had a lot of people who with the mental health systems and particularly our community behavioral health centers in Kansas who are now mandated to serve birth to death. And so the reason for this event was really making sure that we are building connections across anybody who has kind of resources to support early childhood, including like with children, but also their caregivers, and people who are working more in the formal mental health system and maybe don't have the expertise in like child development and how to navigate how to like how to kind of break down what might be contributing to if a child is having some mental health needs, if there's something else going on in the home, and like how do you support parents as well as young kids, all of that. And so this is really an opportunity to bring all those people together and kind of say, here's some shared language that we're working with, what we're talking about early infant and early childhood mental health, what that means. And then also like kind of how can we help each other a little bit better? How can we make sure there's stronger handoffs? So we did sense making activities. For anybody who's not familiar with sense making, it's really a tool to help pull together. We had about I think almost 30 stories shared from the workforce across Kansas about experiences of either their own personal experiences with their families, a family they serve, or just another family they know of situations where felt like they were thriving or just surviving. So there were some really encouraging stories and there were some really hard to read stories about people's experiences related to early childhood mental health and kind of what it's like to help families navigate different services that are available, what happens to families when services work the way that they're intended to, and kind of maybe what happens when there's some gaps. And so we had those stories. We did some different activities to kind of literally make sense of those and try to understand what are things that we need to be paying attention to when we're talking about early childhood mental health in Kansas. And then we did some mapping. The groups were broken out by regions of the state. And so we had very large, full table-sized maps that we will pull together to kind of synthesize, but really like literally mapping out like, where connection points working well. So things like in your part of the state are referrals from childcare to Part C working well if the child has a developmental delay flagged, that kind of thing. And then where are they not? And so I'm really excited to put all those maps together and kind of say like, where are the opportunities for us to bridge those gaps? And I think my biggest takeaway from the conversation was there's a lot of things in this work that can feel, like a huge uphill battle to solve for. And there were some things in this conversation that were like, oh, we could actually address that. Like we could actually like literally people would be like walking somebody across the room and being like, you need to talk to this person to help address that need. So it's really nice to come out of that conversation with some like, I think, tangible next steps to help strengthen those connection points in different regions. And hopefully, my hope is that people who were in that conversation feel like they know more people than they did before, and that we're all trying to address early childhood mental health together. And like none of us can know everything. And so knowing the people who might be able to fill in those gaps That was really the goal of the event, and it seemed like people felt good about that. So I think there's going to be a lot more to come. I honestly, we don't know exactly what is to come, but we've got a ton of information that our team will be sorting through, pulling all those maps together, and kind of figuring out like how do we keep momentum going and making sure that people continue to have a space to say, hey, I don't know how to meet this family's need. Is there somebody else who can help me with that? So I'm really excited to dig into that with the mental health work group in a little bit. But we'll certainly keep the rest of you up to date as we know more. And I know several people, I think were at the event who were on today. So if I'm sure I did miss something. So if I missed something that anybody else wants to share, please hop in. I think that was my last slide. So if anybody has any other questions about PDG, just let me know.
Thank you, Megan, and I can't wait to share out and invite the zones grantees to the panel and all of the work that they're doing across the state. And not only that, our accelerator grantees to just a lot of space going on at one time. And thank you for the update on the mental health. It's the first time I've had very professional FOMO because I did not get to attend, and very, very jealous because I joined a meeting that afternoon. And that was the talk. People were excited about what they had heard in the morning. So I know it was a great event. And here's some resource and events. If you know of local resource and events that you want to highlight to the panel, please email those to myself or Lindsay or to both, and we'll make sure that it gets in the slides. And I know we have some CCPC members on our panel, and really would love to have an update at our next meeting of how your Camp Connect went, especially as we're talking about mental health and what you as an organization did to support your providers. So we'll talk more about that. But again, here's all upcoming events coming in Kansas, and if anybody's attending the governor's conference later on this month, I look forward to seeing you there, and hopefully I can meet you in person. And I know KCSL staff is working really hard to get that event off and going. So if we can move to the next slide. Oh, so key takeaways. I'll go first and then see if there's any key takeaways from you guys. But I think really the key takeaway for me is really going back to Commissioner Watson and his, never mistake a policy and the trickle down effects that it can have. And again, the infant to work. And we always tie that into, it's less stress on the family, what that looks like and that opportunity, but then really tying it into a tangible moment that is on, a child development benchmark was like such an aha moment for me, and really appreciated him sharing that. And, we really look at things from one lens. And I really hope the panel is an opportunity that we can get, all of that input and have those aha moments. And so for me, that was a takeaway that I have appreciated. And it is really like one of those core memories in my professional life that I'm going to think about, that it's not always just about a policy, but all of the real impact that those policies have. And going to leave a space to see if there's any takeaways from you as a panel member today. And if you don't have any, that's fine. Just wanted to give a space that and an opportunity for you all to also have a voice. Okay, with that natural pause, we will then move to the next, which is our next panel meeting, November 21st. Will definitely be before the Thanksgiving holiday, so we won't have consumed tons of turkey. So expect everybody to be engaged and very vibrant because this is before Thanksgiving. Also, a reminder that the Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund has their board meeting on December 5th. And what we're going to do is we're going to end with our bright spots. And then we are going to then have our work group breakout rooms open. But I really wanted to share some of our bright spots. Shout out to the home visiting conference that took place at the end of September. Tabitha is one, and Holly and Trina, so many are involved in the panel were a part of really making that come together. But really need a shout out to Holly Fry with Kidichi, and all of the work as the home visiting leadership team to really make sure that home visiting was a success. And to Tabitha, another board or panel member who was a guest speaker at the home visiting. And I took a picture like when she was speaking, and really sad that she's not there, but love this Maya Angelou quote, where do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Like what a great way to end our panel meeting today, and thinking about that, and loved that moment. And then we have some of our panel members like Kim Kennedy, who is also part of that home leadership team. And then for Sarah Bloom, who was in Utah, that you all didn't get to meet that when she was doing her introductions because she was on the phone, have a photo of Sarah today, who participated in the Ellsworth County as part medical building, ribbon cutting and groundbreaking, because that's really Department of Commerce's moving forward work that impacts all of us in our community. So love that picture. And we don't have Mandy on today, but Jam Fest is such a big event for Child Start, and love that it brought community members together, and everything that they've done. And then wanted to give a shout out to really tie in the family-friendly workplace. If nobody knows, if you've never met Jason Tiller, he is the Health Department Administrator for Saline County Health Department. And I really appreciate Jason. I have worked with him in multiple capacities, and have really worked in supporting his team in the child care licensing space. And he really is a health department administrator that is in tune with the needs of his community that he serves, and also within his health department and his employees. And stole this from LinkedIn and shared like, hey, Jason, you're making the panel bright spots today. But I really love his quote. And he says, if we are in positions to influence better for our employees, we also have to demonstrate it. We can't just talk the talk without the walk. Supporting families who are trying to balance work, family, and childcare means that sometimes the office looks like a daycare. I wouldn't trade it for anything, because we understand people, and we understand struggle, and we understand what it takes to move life forward and leave people and places better than they were before. Working with two of my granddaughters at the office today so my adult children can work too. And I loved the photo that he put in there. So definitely a shout out to Jason and the work that he does, and illustrates that, and really thought that would bring it home. Until then, Megan showed me a video from Thrive Allen County, and what they're doing, and in the space that people need to just, no pun intended, thrive. And so we're going to end today's a formal meeting that is being streamed with Thrive Allen County. And then we will have, all of the work groups, breakout sessions open for you guys to join. And just really want to thank you all for staying on screen with us for 2 hours, and look forward to hearing back from the work groups. So Lindsay, if you want to go ahead and show our video as we adjourn today.
Across Kansas, child care providers are the heart of their communities, nurturing our children, supporting working families, and helping local economies thrive. Yet, for many, access to affordable health insurance has remained out of reach. The Child Care Health Insurance Reimbursement Program, or CHIRP, was designed to change that. Through CHIRP, providers and educators have received up to $300 per month to help cover their health insurance premiums, easing financial strain, improving stability, and strengthening the workforce that keeps Kansas families going.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Sherry, and I work in a pre-K environment. I've been doing that now for almost 3 years.
My name is Shane. I'm the lead teacher in the 2.5 to 4-year-old room here at the center. I've been here this is my 21st year.
My name is Brandy, and I have been in childcare for 18 plus years. I am the primary provider in my home daycare, and kind of what led me to it was the opportunity to just be there when my kiddos come home from school.
It's been an excellent experience. It's just so enjoyable to watch kids learn and grow and develop and just become who they are. You know, working in a child care environment, you have these little ones running around all the time, and you know, it's a major thing to have good health insurance.
When the center first offered insurance, it was a few years ago, and I got it, and then I was like, God, it's expensive. And so I canceled it, and then I went a couple years without it.
The cost of healthcare for my family is pretty high, and this stipend was great. It was crucial. It was very helpful. It allowed us to save a little. It allowed us to cover some of the extra cost of other expenditures that we have in our home. It was just a nice safety net there, especially when it keeps going up every year. And it went up again this year.
It's just good to know that somebody else cares about us in that particular field. And when you have a program like this, you know, just put your money where your mouth is. If you really care, then show people. And that's what this program does. It shows, you know, those people that are in that program, you know, I got somebody out there who has my back, who's going to help me, you know, support myself in this particular area. And it makes a difference.
I can't tell you how this year alone, it saved us. When I got the email saying that, you know, I got accepted, I was tearing up. Like, I almost started crying because it was just like, oh, we're going to make it this year.
Receiving the funds from the stipend and having that back for me professionally and personally have just been wonderful. You know, life is expensive and it's not getting any less expensive. And these funds have just been a great blessing to our family. And we just are so appreciative of it.
I was able to use this, you know, the supplement to help me get better. And, you know, and as a result of that, I think I've become a better support person for my school.
It was nice. I can't tell you how nice it was. It really took a lot of stress off of me for sure. And so it was just, and then having a little less stress just affects every part of your life. Work life, home life, everything. So it was, honestly, it was nice.
The stories you've just heard are a glimpse into what happens when we invest in the people who care for Kansas children every day. CHIRP has provided stability, peace of mind, and a stronger foundation for the childcare professionals who help our communities thrive. With continued and expanded support, programs like CHIRP can keep changing lives one provider, one family, and one community at a time.
Okay, what a great bright spot to stop on. And again, appreciate everybody's participation. Lindsay, did you, as we're going to segue off our live stream, do you have any statements or do you want to share about the breakout rooms again, just as a reminder?
We'll open them up soon. That's all.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining.